Why don't we jump though to Greta Van Fleet, because I want to save Future and Juice World before the end. And I know that you don't like Cloud Nothings, but Greta Van Fleet you gotta like.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome. But that's because it doesn't sound like modern rock music. That's why I like it.
So you like it because it sounds like classic rock music?
Yeah, it's classic rock, which doesn't exist anymore. And I mean, literally every review you read about Greta Van Fleet, literally anything you read about them, the first paragraph mentions that they sound exactly like Led Zeppelin, because it's true. The lead singer of Van Fleet sounds exactly like Robert Plant on Led Zeppelin 1. It's almost uncanny how much he matches that like howl, that like warble of Robert Plant. It's insane. Um, so on like purely like technical grounds, sonic grounds, I like Greta Van Fleet. I think almost all their songs I dig because again, it sounds like the '70s. It's cool,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not stuff you hear anymore. Most people don't endeavor to make rock music so blatantly influenced by the music of the past, you know? So I like it for that regard. I think the more interesting questions around Greta Van Fleet is not when the music is good. The music is good, but whether like anyone actually wants them to make music like this, and whether like who is it for, you know? But what did you think from this? Their debut. This is only their debut album. They had a bunch of EPs coming up to this, but what did you think?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because the first time I listened to them, I was pretty dismissive. Like I really just thought, oh, this is Led Zeppelin karaoke, cool. Like it wasn't really anything that seemed new or groundbreaking. But after I listened to the album, I kept playing their songs over in my head, and I was like, man, like the first one, Age of Man, I feel like has such just like a good like head bobbing like as you go through it, like type rhythm to it, and I was like, man, I really want to listen to that again. And then I was thinking about um, Brave New World, and I was like, oh man, the way that the guitars like come in there at the end and like really build up was so excellent. And they really just had moments throughout this album that had me coming back. I had checked out their they dropped an 8-song EP last November. And I checked that out a while ago, and I had really liked it when I listened to it, but it wasn't something I came back to a lot. But listening to this made me go back to that, and I really appreciated the work they did on that as well. Um, I think Greta Van Fleet is probably the most exciting name in rock, just because this is their first album, and to be performing at this level and making songs at this level and getting compared to, I mean, I don't know if it's an undeniable statement, but the best rock band of all time, like purely rock, um, is really impressive. And regardless of who they're making it for, if they keep making this kind of music, people are gonna come and appreciate them for the band that they are, and not just sounding like Led Zeppelin. So I'm really pumped for Greta Van Fleet. It gives me some hope for rock music. And I know that you had a podcast that you sent me that I plan on listening to. Maybe we should give that a shout out. But tell me more about what about this. Like, do you think that they can actually like create a sphere for themselves within the rock world?
I think that's the key because I mean they're really young. I think they're almost all siblings, and then like one friend, all from Michigan, I think it is.
The Kiska brothers.
Yeah, and they're all the whole band is between the ages of 22 and 19. Mm-hmm. So they're very young. And so again, some of these EPs came out when they were even younger, obviously. So it's an impressive point for people this young. It kind of reminds you of, even though totally different sound, but reminds you of the car seat headrest dude, who's also really young. And Julian Baker, same thing. Like, young people really accomplishing something in rock music at a young age, which is nice to see. But yeah, I think their next project, next body of work, whatever it is, however soon it comes out, is really important for them because they are going to be, like you said, how you initially reacted, they are going to be dismissed as just aping, classic rock and prog rock of the 70s until they actually prove they can make stuff that doesn't sound like that. Mm-hmm. I think and the reason that matters is because when would you ever be in the mood for this type of music and decide to listen to Greta Van Fleet over Led Zeppelin? It's like, I don't see a scenario where I'd rather pick Greta Van Fleet. And that's unfortunate because they're clearly very proficient guitarists, really good songwriters, and a lot of good personality. They have everything, but they're making music that's so emboldened to the past that it almost doesn't it's like holding them in. I want to see what else they can do. So that's kind of how how I would think about it. And I mean, right now they make music that I'm sure is going to be dope as fuck at festivals. They were just at Coachella,
Yeah.
and if they stay in this lane, they're going to be successful doing that circuit. But that's kind of what happens with all middle popularity rock bands, right? Make music, go do festivals, go do shows, make more music, go do festivals, go do more shows. That's all you can do, right? So I think they have the potential to be bigger, to do more, because they have that sound. But I want to see some evolution, because like it's like it's their identity until it's not their identity, that they sound like Led Zeppelin. It's like, for instance, Lights sounds like Phil Collins. It's so obvious you don't even need to say it, right?
Right.
He can do stuff that's different. And we know Greta Van Fleet's talented listening to this music. So I want to see more so they can kind of escape that label.
Yeah, your point about like when would you ever pick listening to Greta Van Fleet over Led Zeppelin, I think is a good one, and it's an important one. It's going to be a really uphill battle for them because there is such similarity in the voice. Even if they make music that's way different, Led Zeppelin had a lot of different iterations of their sound. Like they went through phases where they used more like psychedelic sound when they went more classic rock and relied more heavily on acoustic instruments. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do create that lane for themselves. But I feel really optimistic about this band for a couple of reasons. One, I think there's a lot of people, and especially those like 40 to 60-year-olds who, we were right on during that time and are moving more towards like, I don't listen to anything new anymore. And a lot of people in that age group are probably there, but this is the kind of band that they could probably get into and be like, oh, this band's really cool. Now, if that will work against them with younger people will be an interesting point. But I do think that this is the type of band that could have broader appeal than just to a younger audience. Another interesting thing about them, and just thinking more about the idea of like, when would like what could they do to really differentiate themselves, is I think there's been such a gaping hole for a band like them in the sphere of rock that even if they can't totally differentiate it, I mean, they're always going to be compared with the voice, and I think even their guitar sound, I think that's okay, because I think that a lot of people want to have a band like them that they can go see, that they can tour, and that every time they're coming around, they're going to buy their ticket and they're going to see a great show. I saw people commenting on their YouTube videos. They haven't even produced their Kashmir yet. They haven't made their Stairway to Heaven yet, and they're going to be put into this sphere where they're going to have to meet these really lofty expectations. But the songs that they thrive the most on, I think, are their longer songs, because they are able to riff off each other so well. They obviously have chemistry. I think Greta Van Fleet's going to be here for a while. So that's our very positive Greta Van Fleet review. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, I think the path for them is to be like Kings of Leon. Kings of Leon evolved a little bit, but their original sound was more bold in the past than really anything that was coming out at that time in the mid 2000s. Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of path to getting bigger, but also evolving a sound is would make sense to me. And Kings of Leon also sounds quite different, obviously. But I think that should be like the thought in mind to evolve the sound.
The template. Man, we've been talking a lot about Kings of Leon recently. I feel like we were talking about them. What?
I said shout out Jackson, Maine.
Yeah, Jackson, Maine. Man. I didn't think without putting an album out, Kings of Leon was going to get this much play this year. But hey, they have a real sphere within the culture at this point. It's kind of crazy, especially because when we were teenagers, that's when like Sex is on Fire and that whole album came out. So yeah, interesting. Anyways, let's jump to